Welcome to the Parenting with Confidence podcast. I am your host, Teresa Alexander Inman, board certified behavior analyst and infant toddler developmental specialist. Today, I have the absolute honor of welcoming Dr. Ravi Rajaratnam. He has
Hi.
30. I'm so excited. I'm just like going ahead, like just rushing through this.
No worries.
Moving. So I'm just going to tell people a little bit about you, like why are you here? So I'll just let them know a little bit about you and then we'll just dive right in. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So Dr. Ravi has 30 years of experience in the corporate world that allowed him to mentor, coach, and develop different employee demographics of leadership across various organizations to be high performing and to excel in the current industry. 4.0 that required excellence in the 21st century skills. I'm going to talk more about 21st century skills. Also, he worked with many individuals in his 30-year career that helped him improve help them improve their skills. There was one common theme that kept emerging over and over again that contributed to their skills deficiency. Their belief systems. Okay, so that's what their belief systems. Belief systems that were shaped and influenced during their early childhood and their life experience. Welcome, Dr. Ravi Rajaratnam. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Teresa, for having me here.
Oh my goodness, it's an absolute honor. I had I'm not completed reading your book yet, which is a really great, easy read. And it's not like a big novel, so it's perfect for parents. It's a great way to get them started on the journey of helping their children develop those 21st century skills we're going to talk about.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
So why? So we talked a little bit about your why, but do you want to go a little deeper into why you decided to write this book and why do you feel it's so important to avail parents of this information?
Sure, sure. Maybe I should back up a little bit. I know you touched on my background, but I'm essentially a strategic advisor and an executive coach. And also my training in industrial and organizational psychology has influenced me in wanting to figure out what motivates and inspires people to be the best version of themselves. Well, just others just choose not to be.
Right.
An intrigue that has always been part of my DNA. And how I approach about going through this is looking at working with leaders and executives, who want to be high performing. And I ask them simple questions. Questions like, are they willing to change? Do they even care? Are they motivated to change? Are they coachable? And as you can see from these questions, they're all specific to the individual's willingness and being open to better themselves, which eventually led me to write my book, Hardwiring versus Rewiring, Shaping the Mindset, Skill Set, and Behaviors during early childhood development. Because every time when I work with an executive or leader to work on their improvement, and as I peel back the onion, it always went back to their childhood. And their performance issues were basically, most of the time, deeply rooted in their upbringing during early childhood development stages, whether it's a lack of a role model, having a single parent, a broken family, trauma, etc., etc. So that's one of the main reasons why I wrote the book. Is like, how can we, hardwire the right traits early on so that they can become exemplary later on?
Wow, amazing. So what you're telling me now, we have an even harder job as parents.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, but it's good to know, right? It's really great information to know how we shape the lives of our children. And
Exactly.
yes, and what I love, you're not just saying, okay, this is the problem, figure it out. You're actually giving us steps to help parents, meet that need so their children can be exemplary adults.
Exactly, exactly. Because, 95% of who we are is based on our subconscious mind. And that's when the belief systems are. And when are the belief systems formed? During early childhood development, between 0 to 5, when our neuroplasticity is the highest, right? So before somebody can go into the rewiring process, they need to understand how they were cognitively wired. right? Because Sigmund Freud said, they have like the Freudian slip. It's basically meaning that everybody can be a good leader or a manager, but a true manager or leader appears in times of stress. And if they were to default back to how they were cognitively wired, that's when you figure out, oh my God, yeah, what's wrong with this person? So I try to go at the root level. And that's when it's like, hey, let's get parenting right rather than doing it part time. And most parents, and myself included, we did our best based on how we were brought up by our parents and grandparents. And there's no instruction manual. So what I wanted to do was provide an instruction manual for parents, early childcare providers, and also teachers, and how to nurture the mindset during early childhood development so they can be exemplary.
Wonderful. So instead of, trying to fix it later on, let's put that foundation in early.
Exactly, exactly. And if you look at, so as part of my research, it's like, okay, what are the early childhood development skills? Besides the motor skills, which are visible, it is essentially cognitive, language and communication, and social and emotional, and it's all about how we think and how we communicate with each other and how we relate to each other and things like that. But what's more important or fascinating as I was doing the research is these skills are directly related to also a 21st century skill. So, I'll get more into that later on. But first, it's important to understand that the mind and brain are actually two different but interconnected entities, right? Because the brain is considered to be a physical thing, whereas the mind is considered to be mental. So that's why the subtitle of my book is Shaping the Mindset, Skill Set, and Behaviors During Early Childhood Development. And mindset essentially is a set of beliefs that shape how you make sense of the world and yourself. And it influences things like how you think, how you feel, and behave in any given situation. So as a child, where do you think the set of beliefs come from? It comes from the parents, caregivers, and the environment that they grow up in. So what I wanted to do in this book is to provide parents, grandparents, and any childcare providers simple and practical strategies and tips for them for the proper development of the mindset, skill set, and behaviors at the early age.
Wow, yes. And again, I cannot tell you how valuable that book is and the information that is in there. And the fact that you were able to reverse engineer, and then come and realize, okay, there are these adults and they have these, mindsets. Where did it come from, and what can we do now to help them? How can we nurture those skills early in life? And like you said, 0 to 5 is critical. So how can we nurture those skills within that age range?
Yes, yes, that's critical. And I tell every single parent the best toy a child could have is them, the parent. Right? Because they are little sponges. They look at everything that we say, do, just even little things because they are born. A newborn, I'm going to get into science a little bit. Now I get excited. A newborn baby, has all the brain cells they'll have for the rest of their life. So, and these brain cells are called neurons, and there are 86 billion neurons, same as an adult at the time of birth.
Oh,
But at this birth time, the raw material, the neurons, do not have any connections at all. So it's like a blank canvas, still immature and waiting to be hooked up. Similar to a computer. When we go to store, buy a computer, we need programs and productivity software so that the computer is functional. Therefore, a baby's job in the first 3 years is to build lots and lots of connection, and we call that synapses, right?
mm,
And as I was saying, the critical period where a child's brain develops more than it does at any other time in their life is from birth to 5. It grows to about 80% of the adult size by age 3, and is nearly fully grown at over 90% by 5 years old, right? So a period where billions of neurons in the child's brains are connecting and waiting to be hooked up via synapses, the connection between the neurons. And that is influenced by the parents and what they learn from their caregiver and the environment. And this is where the set of beliefs are also passed on to the child, right?
Yeah, so that's when
So
the programming happens.
exactly, exactly. So the goal or the importance here is to make sure that the right mindset and the skill set and behaviors are done throughout the cognitive, the language and communication and social emotional skills, right?
Yes. Wow. So how do we start that process though of nurturing? So it's like, how do we nurture cognitive skills? How do we nurture the language development? Like, how do we like practically do that? How does a parent look at their baby and hold their baby and do, put that programming into them?
Yes. I talk about four C's, which I'll get into soon. But
Okay.
before I get into four C's, I'll give you like a practical example or a statistic, right? When somebody has advanced linguistic skills, right? Again, it starts 0 to 5, the programming that happens 0 to 5. That's a really, really popular study by Hard and Risley that was done back in 1990s, right? And they noticed there was a remarkable difference in the early vocabulary experiences of young children. And the difference was simply down to the number of words that they heard over a period of time. And the result showed that the average child on welfare had half as much experience per hour, which was 616 words per hour, as the average working class child, which was 1,251 words per hour. And the professional family had 2,153 words per hour that was heard. So that's the difference between the social economic condition. But here's a bite-sized tip. Regardless of what your social economic status is, always practice active verbal interaction. Use a wide range of vocabulary. Talk and sing with a kind voice and expression. I would even encourage self-talk and narrating your actions as well, things you see, feel, and experience, because your conversations, the stories, the songs, all of those build the infant's vocabulary. And it demonstrates emotions and models a way to act and even teach problem-solving skills. So just model, and again, you have to be also exemplary, and talking to them and interject that in your day-to-day activities, whether it is bathing them or going on a walk or whether they're feeding them. Just talk out loud, and how they look at everything. How do you treat others? Are you being conscientious? How are you even, talking to me as a child, right? Are you multitasking? Are you looking at your phone and responding to the child? Right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
simple things like that, And so what I've done is, because we live in such a busy world, I have put together a bite-sized strategy that talks about what are the different parts of the brain and when they develop and when is a sensitive development period for the cognitive skills. What is a sensitive development period for the language and communication, social and emotional, and what you need to do as a parent to nurture that during that peak periods. And I just gave you an example on, how can you improve their linguistic skills.
Yes. And that is so powerful because that is also shown to, affect them academically. Because if a child's
Exactly.
linguistic skills are not as developed, then they have more challenges in school and
Exactly.
acquiring, the skills that they need to function.
Hmm. And you don't have to get an expensive toy, nothing.
Right.
You're just role modeling. That's
Yeah.
all you need. That's why I went back to and saying that the best toy a child could have is a parent. But we're
Oh,
so busy.
yeah.
So let's get parenting right by hardwiring the right skill set, mindset, and behaviors, because it's not expensive. You just need to be present, and you need to be engaged, and you need to be engaged in a way that you want your child to grow up. And that's essentially, if you look at what's going on in society, we look at all the different biases and belief systems. Where did that come from? Even if you go to all these different countries and things like that, they have so much animosity among themselves. Where did that come from? Where's the root cause? It's how they were nurtured, their belief systems and the biases were ingrained during early childhood.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. Now, the thing is, though, you talked about parents being distracted and all the other things. How much time do you think, because parents will I don't have time to sit and talk and do all this stuff with my child. How much time? And again, you know what? You answered that question. Let me just about, because you said narrate what you're doing. So they don't have to stop what they're doing. They can just narrate what they're doing when their child is present. So in case they
Mhm.
weren't listening, like it just got me,
Right.
narrate what you're doing so that your child, you're still engaging and you're still continuing, like, I'm washing the dishes. Oh my goodness, the water's hot. Or, this and that. Oh, I dropped the dish. Did you hear that? That was so loud.
Exactly, because they're parents, right? They repeat all these words like, oh my God, where'd they get the word from? Well, you were talking to your significant other or your sibling or whoever, right? That's where they picked it up. Because remember, the 86 billion neurons are waiting to get hooked up. There's a lot of mental processing happening in the first 0 to 5. And they're observing everything through all your physical senses, all 5 senses. And that's why you need to be present and do that, right?
Yes. No, you just reminded me of a little guy who I work with. He's 2 and hadn't developed, like we were working on him developing language. And as he started to, again, those things that you shared, those were the strategies that I had mom engage in. And it was funny because when he started talking, he would refer to his dad as babe because that's how his mom referred to the dad.
It's
My
funny.
goodness, I think, babe.
That is funny.
It's like
That is funny.
direct imitation.
Yes, yes. So let me give your audience another thing that I have in my book called the 4 C's, right? And basically, that's another way of how you can instill the right development skills. And the 4 C's are essentially curiosity, conscientiousness, critical thinking, and compassion. Basically, teaching, practicing, and reinforcing the 4 C's into their day-to-day activities and interaction with their child. And it's not difficult, but it requires discipline. And you need to be constantly conscious about the 4 C's. And let me give you just like a highlight of what that means, right? Curiosity is all about having a strong desire, not just a desire, a strong desire to learn and know something. And it's also the catalyst for innovation. Because even like if you go into corporation right now, which I do a lot of training on, design thinking is all about innovation. And part of innovation is curiosity. How cool would it be if you instill that curiosity at an early age, right? So they are intrinsically motivated to learn, experience, and understand the environment around the world. So that's first C, conscientious, the curiosity. The second C is conscientiousness. And the word itself explains what it is, but basically it's high levels of thoughtfulness, uh, good impulse control, and even having goal directed behaviors, right? And the third C is critical thinking. I call this the connective tissue or the silent C because this is what binds the cognitive, language and communication, and social and emotional skills, allowing them to function holistically, if you mean, you know, where they are in tune with each other because the quality of everything that we do is determined by the quality of our thinking. And if you go into the website for the Foundation of Critical Thinking, I love this definition. It talks about it. It says it is the intellectual discipline of processing information that is gathered from or generated by various means as a guide to belief and action. So it guides the belief and action. So that's critical thinking. Because this great definition, and you can go look into it even further. But sometimes when you ask people, it's like, "What do you mean by critical thinking?" Oh, think critically. Like, what does that mean, right?
Yeah.
And then the last C is compassion, and that's really really important as well. It's the it's sympathetic consciousness of others' distress.
Mm,
Not only the sympathetic consciousness of others' distress, but also a desire to alleviate the distress,
right.
right? And in order to be compassionate, it requires you to have sound cognitive skills, to bring awareness, to recognize that there is suffering or unease, and make you feel emotionally moved by the plight of others. That not only do you try to understand how it might make you feel, but also an attempt to take action to relieve this suffering. So as you can see, just by the definitions of the 4 C's alone, there's a direct correlation to the 21st century skills, which is essentially cognitive, intrapersonal skills, and interpersonal skills. That's why I gave the 4 C's, and you can have a connection between the 21st century skills. If you want, I'll be more than happy to go into what I mean by cognitive, intrapersonal, and interpersonal skills.
Yes, please, because I think, we don't want to leave people hanging. So yes, but please connect them for us and
Sure.
explain them.
The of course, right now we are in digital industry, or industry 4.0 it's called. And if you look at what the critical skills are, they talk about cognitive skills, intrapersonal skills, and interpersonal skills. Cognitive skills are nothing more than the cognitive processes and strategies in terms of knowledge and creativity. Essentially, it is the skills required to acquire knowledge and processing information through thought, such as reasoning, intuition, perception, imagination, innovation, problem solving, active listening, and things like that. So that's everything to do with cognitive. So it has like the cognitive processes and strategies, knowledge, and creativity. Then you have the intrapersonal skills. This includes like the intellectual openness, work ethic and conscientiousness, and positive core self-evaluation. Uh, these are skills that are associated with adaptability. How do you adapt to others? Self-management, self-development, and both self-awareness and also group awareness to basically help control your attitudes and inner processes. And this is what the interpersonal skills is what forms the foundation for relationship building and help navigate your interpersonal relationships, which is the last skill, which consists of teamwork, collaboration, leadership, primarily behaviors and techniques and traits you rely on when you interact and communicate with others in different scenarios, whether it's globally or within an organization.
Wow. That is, I hope people are taking notes because that's a lot of information and it's a lot of really great information because without those skills, when you talk about, and I'm just going to go back to the 4 C's for a second, because when you talk about, the critical thinking skills, I work in the school district and there are a lot of children, a lot of students, they don't have them. They do not have the critical thinking skills and compassion. Oh my gosh. I mean, what kind of society would we live in without compassion? And
Mm-hmm.
we see it. I mean, I've seen 3-year-olds just walk up to another 3-year-old and just punch them in the face and laugh, or scratch them. And then we've asked them, well, how did you feel when you did that? Because we use zones of regulation. So then there are
Mm-hmm.
colors. So we'd have a little meeting afterwards, and we'd ask all the students how they felt. So we use natural occurring circumstances to help
Mm.
them understand and to break it down to see exactly where all of that came from.
Yeah.
And the little guy, he wrote down that he was green, everything was great, even though the other guy was crying at the time. And actually, no, I'm sorry, he was 5, so this was kindergarten. He was 5 years old
Yeah.
and just
Yeah.
did that. And he was okay with it. And it scared me for a moment because I was like, oh my goodness, what's going to happen as he gets older? With
Mm.
this lack of compassion, and oh my, yeah. So all of this
Exactly.
is so
You mentioned an interesting point there too, because many executives and leaders that I work with, I also bring in this concept of compassion, right? You cannot use the word love, but what I come in is empathy. Empathize with the employee. And my God, they were having a lot of issues during COVID, especially when everybody was working from home. Are they being productive and things like that? Like, no, it's your manager it's your responsibility as a manager or leader to give them the task, right? And treat them like an adult and say, this is the milestones, get it done. How long you get it done or how you get it done, I don't care. But at the same time, I'm sensitive that you have to deal with your family and kids at home, not going to school and things like that. Have the empathy, right? And they struggle with that. But again, part of the struggle is because the early childhood development.
exactly. Oh my goodness. And the thing is, we want people to have empathy towards us, but it's difficult to, show that, which is really, it makes it more challenging because again, speaking to the other day I was driving with a family member and somebody, came into the lane, cut us off. And, she's like, stupid. And I was just like, okay, you don't know what happened before they got here. you know,
Mhm.
like you can't just, that's not helping. Like
Okay.
don't send that energy out to that person. Maybe they were distracted because of something. Maybe they're trying to rush to get to the hospital because a loved one's there. We don't know their situation. So be slow to judge and quick to empathize,
Exactly. And when worse is, can you imagine if there were children in the car?
Right.
What are you role modeling?
Yeah, exactly. And see, that's the thing, right? So I was like, yeah, be very careful of, all of that because too, you're stressing yourself out by judging this person, and it just didn't sit right with me. So we had that conversation.
Yeah, there's a great saying by this Holocaust survivor, Viktor Frankl. He said, between stimulus and response, there's pause. And the power is in how in the power, there's a lot of power in the pause in terms of how you respond. I'm kind of butchering it, but essentially, you want to make sure that you are being very conscientious about the response rather than just, you know, what kind of try calling that person stupid or whatever, because you don't know what the circumstances are, right?
Right. Right.
And Covey, I think, said also seek first to understand before being understood.
Absolutely.
And yeah,
Absolutely.
and I
But
tell all my children, right, make sure you have good listening skill, right? That's the reason why God gave you 2 ears and one mouth.
well, yeah, so amazing. And it's funny because I was listening to somebody who said the the exact same words are in the words listen and silent.
Mm.
I was like, wow, that was so, I'd never heard that before.
Yeah, because
But
what are we trying to do? Is like we're going to show who. Oh, I'm smarter than you. I'm ready to answer and things like that. Are you truly understanding the difference? All the things that they're saying, why they're saying. Are you inquisiting? Are you being empathetic? In terms of why are you saying that? Let me explore that further. You know, before I jump into a solution or before I give you a response. Again, the pause between stimulus and response. That's very powerful. And how you choose to respond is, you know shows a good example of who you are and things like that.
absolutely. And two, in that pause, you can also take note of the tone of voice, the body language, like all those things, because saying something is different when you can, the meaning changes
Exactly.
depending on the tone of voice and the body language and the facial expression. So all those cues, we want children to be able to um, learn so that they can function later on. They can develop those interpersonal and intrapersonal skills so that they're equipped for the 21st century. Yes.
Exactly. Exactly. Because I think words are like only 7% effective. Everything else is the tonality and the body language, right? And can you, as a parent, role model that? Absolutely. You
Yeah.
know, are you telling your child, "Yeah, I love you," versus, "Honey, I really love you," right? It's so much difference, right?
So
Yeah.
true. I love you. Go and play.
Yeah. And then, we have these devices, right? Going back to the education systems and things like that too, right? We give them problems that to known answers. And
Hmm.
that's not real life,
It isn't. It is.
right? Memorization is not real life.
Oh,
So
no.
we need to change that. And that's another thing that I work with even some, leaders who are struggling at home in terms of educating the children and things like that. It's like, let's be more innovative, right? And take charge, right?
So true. So true. I I did most of my schooling in Ontario, Canada,
Okay.
and my master's actually was in the US. And I had friends who went to school in the US. And what I found was really interesting, before a test, the children would be given the answers to study. And I thought, well, like they'd be it's like study this page, that page, this page, or these, like these are everything. And I thought, oh wow, because I know when I went to school, you read this book, right? So the test will be on the first 5 chapters. And
Mhm.
there was always a question that forced us to think about the information critically,
Yeah,
you know and I found that missing. Even as I work in the school district in the US, I find that as a big missing piece because there was a study that where they showed that children, as high schoolers, did not know the difference between fact and opinion. And I thought, oh, that is so tragic. Like, so anybody's opinion, like, I tell you something, oh yeah, she said, so it must be right. For me, that's a
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah. Wikipedia and things like that. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And again, I'm not bashing the system. I'm just reporting.
Yeah. Well, you don't have to bash. Just to look at the statistics.
Yeah.
The graduating rate of high school, how many actually graduating and with what's, standard they are in terms of their reading and mathematics and things like that, right? And then how they have to go through remedial classes when they go to college. And even after they graduate, how employers are training them on some soft skills that wasn't there,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
So true.
So yeah,
Yeah,
the
but they're not,
statistics doesn't lie.
it's sad, and they're not allowed to learn those soft skills. I hate to say it. I was asked to observe a kindergarten classroom. And the students went from task to task to task to task to task. So either they were sitting in a chair or on the carpet, sitting in the chair and in the carpet. So I asked the teacher, when do they just get to be like, when do they get to run outside? Because there was a student who was standing when he was supposed to be sitting. And of course, it's like, and I'll just call him Tommy. Tommy, sit down. And I thought, if Tommy wants to stand and he's not being disruptive, please let him. And I told
Exactly.
her this. I was like, allow them, because for me, I mean, I was sitting in the chair and squirming and trying to stay awake. And it was a very uncomfortable situation for me physically, because the chair is so uncomfortable. And here she is sitting on this beautiful bouncy chair, you
Yeah.
know, and the students are in this hard chair on the hard carpet, and they didn't get to go to recess until 2:20. The school day ends at 2:40.
Oh my God.
So I was just like, there was no movement. Like, get them, we're in Florida, have them go outside for 5 minutes, every hour or something. They're in kindergarten. And then we wonder why children have behavioral concerns.
Exactly.
They engage in challenging behavior. Like, I don't know. I took it to my supervisor. I took it to the principal, because it's like something needs to be done. She's a great teacher. However, and I think the pressure comes from above,
Mhm.
the state, who says this should happen. The children need 90 minutes uninterrupted instruction. They are 5 years old. Teach them
Oh
on the
God.
playground. How are they going to, and they don't learn to interact because they're always doing something.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's sad because they are brilliant children that they have all this different potential. And what do? We muck it up,
Yes, we do,
right?
because we want to tell them how to think and tell them what to do and how to do it and where to, yeah.
Exactly. And even if you look at the nucleus family, it has also changed,
Mhm.
right? I know when I was growing up, a lot of people of my age, we had the extended family, whether it's grandparents and things like that, which
Yeah,
helped out with the nurturing.
absolutely.
Now, it might be a single parent, or it might be in the evenings. That's it. You go into childcare, daycare, and things like that. So it's changed, and you
Yeah.
have no idea what values are being imparted on and things like that. So let's get our priorities right. Let's get our parenting right, because that'll pay dividends. Because at the end of the day, when what we do in our career and things like that, it is for them. They are our future, right?
Yes.
And then you wonder, like you said, like why they messed up. It's like, well, because I wasn't there, right? And 0 to 5 is the formative years, you know. And I know not everybody can afford to do that. That's fine. But I'm a huge proponent, quality over quantity. When you're there, be present,
Mhm.
right? That's when you go full out, because I know, I'm not knocking those who have to work and things like that, but quality is important. So quality versus quantity, right?
Yes.
And the other thing that really saddened me was 250 million children, according to the United Nations, under the age of 5 are developmentally delayed. 250 million globally, right? 0 to 5, under the age of 5. And 0 to 5 is when your neuroplasticity is the highest. So can
Right.
you imagine what's going to happen to them later on in society, right? Who's
Yes.
going to be helping them? They're going to be, there could be a burden to society, things like that. And then on top of that, we have 181 million children born every year globally.
Wow.
So my quest is to get this book out. Like anybody, can just reach out to me. I'll give it to you for free. If I can just help a handful of people to pass these messages on, because these are really, really simple. Again, the most valuable and expensive, least expensive toy a child can have is you. as a
I love
parent.
that. I've never heard that before, but I'm gonna borrow that, Dr. Rob. Tell my parents
Yeah,
it's like, because I walk into homes and they have like a plethora of toys. Yeah, your child only needs you. Save
exactly.
me.
Exactly. And how are you dealing with others? How are you interacting with others?
Yeah.
Are you being respectful to your spouse or significant other? Things like all that was, I was fortunate, I was blessed that that's how I was brought up when I was younger, right? Seeing that, making sure you give when you don't have, even if you don't have, and the giving, it doesn't have to be monetary. It could be like helping out each or somebody, mentoring someone or whatever. So just simple things. We need that because I look around the world right now with what's going on, and it worries me, the trajectory that we are on, So let's take charge, and it's simple. It's not difficult. It just need a little effort.
Absolutely. I remember telling a teacher one day because, they were like, I don't have time to do this. And if their parents this and if their parents that, I said, listen, if you don't do it, then be prepared to have more security in your home because you don't educate the child. What are they going to do? Right? Be prepared to be afraid walking down your street because there's nothing in their street that they need. They need what's on your street. So, or want what's on your street. So, do the work now so that you can prepare them and set them up for success, as opposed to now you're afraid because you don't know who's coming behind you to take what you have. I used to work in juvenile justice. I saw it.
Hmm. That's yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's so much we can do. Just take one step at a time. You know, Even if you don't get my book, go to my website. I have resources and links everywhere to the CDC that talks about the development milestone, what you need to do. What I did was I took all this information, I did the work for you, and put it in this book as a bite-sized strategy. So
Yeah.
I
And it
hope it
is,
helps.
sorry, and it is an excellent book. So Dr. Ravi, please tell them what is your website so people can go there and get your book and see all the wonderful information you have to offer.
Sure, it's www.drravirajaratnam.com. And Ravi, and then the last name is spelled just the way it is, Rajaratnam, Raja, Raja, Rat, as a rat, Nam as in Vietnam, Rajaratnam.com. And you've got all the information. And if there's anything that, if I even provide free complimentary coaching as well. So if there's something that you want to talk about, whether it is early childhood development or even with your own self with rewiring, because I am an executive coach, uh, I'll help you out.
Oh, awesome. Thank you, sir.
You're
Wow.
welcome.
I mean, this has been amazing, but I'm going to ask you though, if there's one thing you want parents to leave with this moment with, what would that be? Out of all the amazing information that you shared, or if you want to add something, feel free.
The one thing I would say is um, love, right? Be more loving. You know, the empathy part and the compassion part is so you know crucial, because if you look at our body, it is, we are wired flight or fight or to grow, right? And there's just basically two mechanisms. And the flight or flight helped us because through our ancestors, like running away from dinosaurs, or don't get eaten by the lion and things like that. But when you are in that flight or flight stress, constantly looking out, under the bushes everywhere, when the tiger's going to pounce me and things like that, you're stressed, right? But that is considered an early warning system. Don't linger in that, right? As long as you're lingering in that, guess what? There's no room for growth. And how can you get the growth to be more dominant is by loving the child, having a safe environment, cuddling them, hugging them, right? Making sure that you're loved and I'm here for you. So grow rather than keeping them stressed and things like that. So that's what I would say. The empathy part, the compassion part, 10x that, 100x that, make sure that you can never spoil a child. I'm sorry. When the child is 0 to 5, you can't spoil a child, right? They need that comfort. They're crying for a reason, whether because their diapers are changed or they're not comfortable or something like that. Comfort them rather than letting them scream and cry and things like that, because that means they're in stress. When they're in stress, guess what? The growth gets shut down, and it is scientifically proven. Go look it up, so growth or stress. So as a parent, your number one responsibility would be to reduce the amount of stress in your child, especially 0 to 5 and beyond, right? It doesn't mean you spoil the child. You just be sensitive, common sense still applies.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
That's
Yeah.
what I would say, right?
Thank you so much, Dr. Ravi. It's been an
You're
absolute
welcome.
honor having you and, sharing all this amazing information that I hope parents will take and run with. Like, start today, people.
Yes, thank you. And I hope you get my book and pass it on to as many people as you can. 181 million children every year are born.
Yes, and the thing is, your book is priceless, Dr. Ravi. It is absolutely priceless because you cannot monetize quality of life, when it comes to skill sets. I mean, finances are one thing, but when it comes to skill set and then having people be whole, right? Having those 4 C's that you talked about, they are vital. You cannot put a
Exactly.
price on that. So please, people, get the book and, avail yourself of the free resources. Please, 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 so that you can parent with confidence.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. It's been an absolute honor.